We are live. Welcome to Crypto Law TV. I am the founder and your host, John Deaton. Listen, there is only one topic that we can talk about today, and that is who will be the next SEC chair, coupled with who should be the Treasury Secretary. We just learned that one of the names on the Treasury Secretary, Howard Lutnick, has been now appointed to the Commerce Department. But let me just first say this. I believe that the number one theme of why President Trump was elected, many would say make America great. I actually think it was America First agenda. That is what gave President Trump the momentum and the mandate that he got, winning not just the Electoral College, but the popular vote. The American people have spoken. So the question is, who are the best people to implement this America First agenda? And what we've been told is that President Trump believes that his economic pillars are going to be lowering taxes for people. Makes sense. Consumer spending is 2/3 of our economy. Obviously, you want to put more money in the consumer's pocket to fuel the economy. Second, tariffs, and using these strategic tariffs to give America, at least eliminate the disadvantage to American companies and create a level playing field and make America first, bring manufacturing back, and all those things that sound great. And then the third pillar of the economic agenda and economic revival is that crypto will play an important role moving forward. So with that said, if that is the agenda, it is absolutely critical that the right people be placed. So we're going to go real quick through Treasury Secretary just to update people. Here is the list that I believe one of these folks is going to be picked as the next secretary for Treasury. Howard Lutnick is now off that list. He's part of the transition team. He co-leads the transition team. He's going to Commerce. So the betting markets first had Scott Bessent. Now it's moved to potentially Mark Rowan or Kevin Warsh. But listen, here's the thing. I think that Howard Lutnick moving to Commerce was the right call. You know, he was going to be at Treasury. He's also in charge of Tether's Treasury. There would have been a lot of people, a lot of conflicts. I've met Howard Lutnick, great guy, very loyal to President Trump and that agenda. I think he's going to be great at the Commerce Department, a little bit more of a cowboy kind of persona. And the betting markets had Scott Bessent, who is traditional markets, very qualified. And I want to bring up a tweet by Ryan Selkis. Just want to give credit where credit is deserved. He did a good job of laying this out. And he made a point that, and I take this as a point as different than the SEC chair. And so I have a graphic. Graphic is a surgeon versus a blowtorch. And what Ryan was trying to point out, who's clearly crypto friendly, is that for the Treasury Secretary, we want to make sure that the traditional markets are calmed and confident, and you need more of a surgeon's kind of approach to Treasury. Remember, crypto's it's not even hit 3 trillion yet, versus we're talking about hundreds of trillions related to the U.S. economy. And the Treasury Secretary is going to have to convince governments to buy our bonds. If they don't buy our bonds, we're going to enter into quantitative easing and basically print more money, and inflation is going to continue to grow. So there's also Senator Haggerty is up there, Mark Rowland. I don't favor Rowland because he's the CEO of Apollo Group. I've got issues with Apollo Group, but who knows? The last tweet by Charlie Gasparino is that it's any guess. My pick for Secretary of Treasury, if I had President Trump's ear, would actually be Brian Brooks, who was Office of the Comptroller, who is brilliant, who certainly is crypto friendly, but he understands traditional finance and the markets as well. That's who I would pick. If John Deaton could pick, it would be Brian Brooks for Treasury Secretary, which brings us to who should be the next SEC chair. And here is the list. All right. And as you can see, Brian Brooks is now on this list as well, which would be outstanding. Make no mistake about it. We've got Paul Atkins, Brad Bondi, Dan Gallagher, Robert Stebbins. Okay. Now, let's first talk about who President Trump absolutely should not pick on that list to be SEC chair, and that is Bob Stebbins. To remind people who Bob Stebbins, he was the Office of General Counsel for the SEC under Chairman Jay Clayton. So what people need to know about the SEC and the Office of General Counsel is that they have to sign off on all of these enforcement actions, right? And he signed off on more than 80 crypto enforcement actions. We're talking about the Ripple case and the fact that the Ripple case was filed despite Joseph Grunfest pointing out before it was filed the massive amount of harm it was going to do to innocent investors. The fact that they were given Ethereum a different approach than XRP, the fact that there was this mass exodus, including Bob Stebbins, who was going to drop this bombshell, the most significant non-fraud enforcement action in modern history, that they're going to drop it. And the director of trading markets is leaving. The chairman's leaving. The director of corporation and finance is leaving. General counsel Stebbins is leaving. They dropped the director of enforcement leaving. And Grunfest said, wait, this looks awful. What's going on here? So that's who Bob Stebbins is. He was part of the crypto regulation by enforcement agenda. But we got even more insight on Bob Stebbins. So remember in the Ripple case, the litigation for those Hinman emails that were desperately fought by the SEC that they did not want the public to see. We know that Bob Stebbins was on that because here's proof of it. Okay. You can see right there, Stebbins received the Ethereum free pass speech, but we take it further. Now, we know in the speech that Bill Hinman, and this isn't a show to get into all the conflicts of interest, the Inspector General report that was in its final stages that I'm guaranteeing you says that there was a violation of 18 USC 208, the Financial Conflict Law Statute of America. They may water the report down and say it wasn't so intentional, but there's no doubt that that's going to be a finding. I guarantee it. Now, but that's not part of this show. The point is that this guy, Bob Stebbins, was aware of all of this stuff. He was aware that Hinman was a profit-sharing partner at the same time that he's giving Ethereum a free pass, and he approved all that shit. But look what else he said. He actually commented, his office commented on the Ethereum speech. And what does he say? He says, you know what? I don't think we should include Ethereum. Now, he didn't say we shouldn't include Ethereum because he thought Ethereum was a security. He said we shouldn't include Ethereum because it will limit our ability at the SEC to say something different in the future. Just think about that for a minute, everybody out there. What does he want? He doesn't want clarity to the market. He doesn't want entrepreneurs to have the clarity and the rules of the road that they need. Let's keep it opaque. Let's keep it completely vague so that today we can pretend Ethereum's not a security, and then tomorrow we can say, oh no, it was always a security. Who does that sound like? Sounds like a guy at MIT who said that the market deserved clarity in 2018, then became chairman and said, it's as crystal clear and been crystal clear for 80 years. Sounds like Gary Gensler, doesn't it? Sounds like a guy that just wants to hedge his positions and have maximum prosecutorial optionality. That's not what we need. And that is not an America First agenda envisioned by President Trump. So would Bob Stebbins be better than Gary Gensler tomorrow? Sure. Who wouldn't be? I could pick a guy off the street with no securities experience, probably been living homeless for the last 2 weeks, and he'd be better than Gary Gensler. So that's not the point. We don't need a light touch. We don't need someone who's going to come in and say, hey, you know what? Well, I'm not going to be so aggressive, but I do want this kind of no, we want rules of the road. We want permanent change moving forward to the markets. If you're going to make crypto America crypto capital of the world, you have to be more than that. We don't want Clayton 2.0. Jay Clayton's been appointed Southern District, New York, fine. But we need more separation than that at the SEC. We don't just need another one of those fellas. So Stebbins would be an actual betrayal of the America First agenda and everything that President Trump has run on, in my personal opinion. That's Stebbins. That's an absolute no. So who do we got next? We've got Paul Atkins. Okay, now Paul Atkins, Brad Bondi worked for him. Hester Peirce worked for him. Clearly a good choice. I'm never going to say anything negative. Certainly qualified. But as John Reed Stark, and I want to give him credit for his tweet, he went through these fellas, and in his words, Paul Atkins would be the most traditional pick. We're talking about a guy that Wall Street will love. I don't want that. Okay, we're talking about disruption. We're talking about we need reform, right? This fella was described, and I'm talking about Paul Atkins still, as someone who reveres the SEC and the staff. I actually want someone to have a little contempt for what the SEC's done. I want someone to come in and say, wait a minute, this is bullshit. This is nonsense. All right, what's went on has actually hurt investors, not helped investors, not protected investors. We need an attitude adjustment. Some people need to get fired. That's what we need. Okay, and so no disrespect to Paul Atkins. I'll certainly support him if he's chosen, but he's not what President Trump needs and wants if crypto and reform and disruption is part of the game. We also have Dan Gallagher. I have friends who said that he's a great choice. He's the CEO of Robinhood. John Reed Stark said great things about him as well. He's had multiple roles at the SEC. Certainly qualified, certainly a good choice. Got nothing negative to say, except that, again, I'm going based on what John Reed Stark and other people that I've talked to say, you know, he's just more of the traditional role, respects the SEC, reveres the SEC, is going to have a light touch change, will focus on regulation more than enforcement. That's fantastic, but it's not the reform. What we need is someone, you know, that let's pull up that graphic again of the surgeon knife versus the blowtorch. That's what Ryan Selkis was talking about. At Treasury, we may want that surgical knife, right? We may want more precision. At the SEC, we need the damn blowtorch, man. We need somebody to go in and say, this, what you all have done is wrong. If I was an SEC enforcement attorney in debt box, I would not have done what they did. I would have refused it. You know, even in the military, and I served 7 years of active duty in the Marine Corps, you don't follow an unlawful order. The SEC attorneys had done some unethical shit. Trust me, I've been behind the scenes. All right, I'm not going to name names. Many of you know some of the names, but they have. We need someone that's going to go in and say, we are going to talk about investor protection and capital formation and making America the capital of the world for crypto and IPO markets. And so when you look at these names, there's only two, in my opinion, that satisfy that. And that is Brad Bondi and that is Brian Brooks. Again, I hope Brian Brooks would be considered for Treasury Secretary. But when you look at John Reed Stark's review, and he didn't have Brian Brooks in there, with Brad Bondi, you want to know what stuck out to me? It was the only one of the people where he said he was extremely pro-crypto, unlike John Reed Stark. Second, it also was the only one that brought up investor protection, someone who is committed to investor protection, individual investors. I looked at Brad Bondi. He doesn't represent Wall Street. He doesn't represent the bankers. He's fought for entrepreneurs. And so that's why I'm so big. But I did a little more research and I talked to people who know Brad. He's the only one publicly who has come out and said, now on the list, this may exclude Brian Brooks because this has sort of been a last minute kind of new entrance to SEC chair. But of the short list that was first put out between these fellas for SEC chair, the only one that I could find that made any public statement affirmatively on DeFi and self-custody was Brad Bondi. And you know what he said? He said that self-custody in America, if our founders could foreseen it, it would have been in the Bill of Rights. And think about that. Digital property, right to property rights, it would be an inalienable right for an America, for a free society. He also went further and said that absolutely 100%, when you take a DeFi protocol and you couple it with self-custody, the SEC's got no business being involved. There is no implication of securities laws. That is what we need. And we need someone who would go in, and according to John Reed Stark, of all the people, Brad Bondi would be the one that goes in with that blowtorch, who's going to reform, who's going to shake things up and change things. And so, you know, for me, if Brian Brooks gets it, I'll be ecstatic, because I think Brian Brooks is awesome. And he just actually helped lay the foundation when he was Office of Comptroller. I would prefer him at the Secretary of Treasury, but if he gets SEC chair, John Deaton's going to be happy. I believe he believes in investor protection. If Brad Bondi gets it, it's going to be great news. I know he's less known for people out there, but trust me, I've done my research, and one of these two guys, that's what we need at the SEC. So listen, I'm nobody, right? I don't have President Trump's ear. I don't have, you know, anybody's ear at the transition team, but I believe in investor protection. I have fought to have smart rules. I'm not an anti-regulation guy. I'm a pro smart tailored regulation. I want stablecoin legislation that will bolster demand for the US dollar and improve our bond market. I want there to be a segregation requirement of customer funds and these centralized exchanges, so that in bankruptcy, it always remains the customer's funds and not be part. There can be no commingling. So a segregation of funds and required audit and 100% reserves. I want all that. And there's an opportunity that we here have for President Trump's vision to be fulfilled, because think about our capital markets, our IPO markets, our crypto markets. If we get the right people in, there is going to be an economic explosion in this country, and it's going to be incredible. And when you look at our debt, right, if we don't make our debt payments, our interest payments more manageable with interest rates being lower and increase GDP, then we're going to have a debt currency crisis. And so how do you do that? You get an explosion, an economic revival of our markets. It's something to be so excited about. And so that's John Deaton's 2 cents. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and let's just hope and pray that this selection is the right selection, because it is. Then everybody out there, we're going to have a great reason to be excited. And I'm excited. I just hope that I'm not bummed out by this choice. It can't be Stebbins, President Trump. It can't be. It would actually be a betrayal of that America First agenda, as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, I'm going to always call it like I see it. So everybody, let's cross our fingers. Let's hope that President Trump and his team is actually doing the diligence. I think they are. I think President Trump is absolutely sincere when he says that he wants America to be the crypto capital of the world. And if we get the right people in this office, I'm telling you, it's going to be great. Everybody have a great one. See you next week.